I sat closely enough to know that Josh did more than post scandalous things about his elders and G3 speakers. His online assaults, in my opinion, are merely the tip of the iceberg.
We're moving into a direction that says the church is not the answer. The gospel is not the answer.
The church has gone after Baal.
Every leader should have been able to see so very clearly how that was going to spread all throughout the SBC and all throughout other denominations.
I've been a Christian since the 70s, and it seems that there have been major threats to evangelical core convictions that come in waves. What would you see as the looming threats to our shared convictions?
Todd Friel of Wretched Radio, now Fortis Institute, has weighed in on the Josh Buice situation. The whole scandal there with Josh Buice, if you're not aware, he had opened up anonymous accounts and is alleged of slandering other pastors and conference speakers and all that sort. He certainly was gossiping and attacking and criticizing, and was said to have slandered as well. There's lots of account information out there that many have seen and the public hasn't seen, but it is out there and it can be found. Well, Todd Friel has weighed in on this. Todd Friel released a video saying, here's what we can learn from the Josh Buice controversy. And it's not going to be what you think at all. It's actually very, very shocking what he says. So he uses Josh Buice as a scapegoat to promote a particular agenda that he has. And I'm very surprised by it. Todd Friel, some of you may like him and enjoy his content. Some of you may not. I'm on the side of he's just kind of a little too secular for me. He's a little too not serious and kind of frivolous, but that's just kind of a preference thing, I guess. But I certainly didn't expect him to say the sort of things that he said. Todd Friel is very much in the Reformed camp and very much on the right side of things. So I thought, I don't follow him very closely, so forgive me if there are things that I'm not aware of over the last so many years. I may have heard bits and pieces of different things, but this is rather shocking, the things that he said in this video. We're going to get into all of that. I've got 13 clips lined up. This is quite the episode here. You're going to see John MacArthur. You're going to see Voddie Baucham. You're going to see how it all ties together, all together to what Josh Buice has to say in this episode. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Truth Transforms. My name's Adam Markley, and we are going to dive right into that and get right into this topic here. First thing, do want to let you know, if you are new here, I've got a free resource for you, and that is an ebook entitled Lessons in Philippians. During the chaotic time that we're living in, I hope that this is a blessing to you, and you can pick that up free of charge at preachingforgodsglory.org/gift. That's preachingforgodsglory.org/gift. I hope that that is a blessing to you. Also want to let you know that I have announced something. I don't have a button for that, but I made a big announcement that I hope that you're excited about if you're a regular listener, and I talk about the mission of this ministry, give an overview, even talk about YouTube and why you're not seeing as much theological and biblical content on YouTube, and probably why you're going to see less and less over time, and talk about some plans going forward. So there's a big announcement and an announcement for lots of biblical content to come. I hope you go take advantage of that, and you can take advantage of that at preachingforgodsglory.org/TS live. I'll link that below. That's preachingforgodsglory.org/TS live, and you'll be emailed a live stream that I did on Saturday, May 31st with this announcement. So let's get to the content here. And we're going to start watching Todd Friel's video. This video is talking about Josh Buice, and let's just not give up way too much before we start it. But I want to make one more comment here before getting into that, get it queued up. And that is simply that all these guys stayed completely silent on the Steve Lawson situation. He wasn't named. He wasn't, he doesn't exist. We're going to talk around the issue. But this Josh Buice situation is very much an opportunity for Reformed camps to jockey for position. It's very much an opportunity for them to try to fill that void. And, we're going to see that voids need to be filled. G3 had a big audience there, and so others are trying to reach those audiences. And if they're reaching them for the glory of God, then praise God, that's wonderful. But Founders Ministry released a podcast, and I thought it was actually a pretty good podcast talking about this situation. And there were people that criticized that podcast and some things about that podcast. And I'll just say, there were people saying like, well, there was false humility and this sort of thing. And I'll say, you know what? I think that's a little bit too much putting on someone's, trying to read someone's motives. But even if there was, it was very, very different than what Todd Friel has done. We'll just go ahead and get started with Todd Friel's video. Clip 1.
Perhaps something redemptive can actually come out of the disclosures that Josh Buice, who's the pastor and president of G3 Ministries, actually had several fake accounts which he used to grossly slander pastors, entire denominations, speakers from his own G3 conference, and even his own elders.
Yeah, and that is a very wicked thing to be going around slandering. I'm not sure what he's referring to about slandering entire denominations, though. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but it is a very terrible thing. And the lesson here, of course, should be how terrible slander is and the double life that Josh Buice was living and all of that. And I've done several videos on it, or 2 videos on it. And then here's what he has to say. Next thing. Let's keep this in mind. This is his standard. This is the standard in which he's going to approach things, he says.
Now, as a rule, I don't think it's a really good practice to criticize a man when he's down, because no doubt his church and his ministry and definitely his family are reeling from the revelations of Dad's rather duplicitous dealings.
Okay. So he wants to be cautious about criticizing a man while he's down. Okay, understand, Todd. So we want to be cautious, don't want to over-criticize a man while he's down. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain involved, there's a lot going on. Let's continue with this video.
With that as our backdrop, with that as my goal, I believe now is the time to address an elephant that has overstayed its welcome.
Okay. So remember, he had said, let's not criticize a man while he's down. And of course, we don't want to be sensational or censorious. He talked about that. Maybe we didn't get to that part yet. We don't want to be highly critical and have a critical spirit and all of those things. And that would be good. Those things would be good and true. There's a number of different things that he kind of leads up to. But then he seems to take things a different direction. You'll see what I mean.
In the room of conservative Christians, and that elephant, it's the spirit of censoriousness, hypercriticism, really unloving critiques of other brothers and sisters, which ultimately leads to division.
And that is a serious problem. And we see that so much. We see hypercriticism, and we see all of this. But now he's going to lay a charge down. Can he substantiate the charge? Well, I guess we should watch.
And while I did not have a ringside seat to all of Josh's behind-the-scenes maneuverings, I sat closely enough to know that Josh did more than post scandalous things about his elders and G3 speakers. His online assaults, in my opinion, are merely the tip of the iceberg. Conservative evangelicals have witnessed a great divorce, and I believe it was instigated and driven in great part by Josh Buice.
Wow. So that he better, I wonder what he's going to bring. Oh my goodness. There's so much. The rest of the video is probably going to be filled with documentation of how Josh Buice has influenced all of evangelicalism. He has some things that nobody else has access to, it seems. Let's let him continue.
It's my opinion that he's responsible not entirely, but in great measure for the division that we've seen in our circles for the last 7-8 years. Josh ignited, fueled, and fanned the flames of division.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe. He did say that is his opinion after stating a very firm charge. He said, this is my assertion. And then he said it's an opinion, but we will move on. We will move on. And he talks about just exactly what that division is. We're going to get to what that division is. And I think you'll be surprised.
Not all, but most, whatever percentage that is, most of these divisions can be traced directly to what is known as the Dallas Statement on Social Justice and the Gospel, which was organized by...
Oh, it was organized by who? Let's take a look. John MacArthur, Voddie Baucham, Phil Johnson, Josh Buice, Michael O'Fallon, James White, Daryl Harrison, Tom Buck, Jeremy Vuolo, Justin Peters, Tom Ascol, Anthony Mathenia, and Craig Mitchell are all the initial signers. They are all part of the original meeting. There are a few others that were at that original meeting that did not sign. That'll be relevant later, but this is who it was put together by. And who do people even know? Like, they aren't paying close attention when they look at something like this. They're like, oh, I know who John MacArthur is. I know who Voddie Baucham is. Who's Josh Buice? With this whole thing, a lot of times it's been like, who's Josh Buice? People just, he's not as well known, okay? So let's get back to that clip. I do have to start it over, unfortunately, but...
Not all, but most, whatever percentage that is, most of these divisions can be traced directly to what is known as the Dallas Statement on Social Justice and the Gospel, which was organized by Josh Buice, who was also the organizer of the original Dallas meeting, which do you see a man there? Top left of the screen, that kind of looks like Todd Friel to me. Does he look like Todd Friel to you? Do you see another man down in the bottom in the front, far left? That looks like John MacArthur to me. You see James White. You see all of these guys. Phil Johnson off to the right. Tom Buck. Were these men there held at gunpoint? Or were these men there, this was all Josh Buice is doing? Or is this an attack on all of these men? Sure seems like an attack on all of these men if standing firm on the gospel of Jesus Christ makes someone outside of the, makes someone divisive. Saying we're going to hold true to the gospel and we're not going to allow for social justice. This is concerning. We need to continue. I attended, and to be sure, there are today some men with whom we should have divided regarding CRT. That is certain, but Josh led the charge to divide with brothers who, for the sake of their own ministries, for the sake of their own consciences, refused to sign the statement, or they refused to be as publicly outraged about critical race theory as Josh determined we should be. Not all.
Because the whole thing, according to Todd Friel, revolved around Josh Buice. I didn't even really know who Josh Buice was at the time. I barely knew, if I knew. And I imagine many of you didn't know either. But I'm going to guess that you did know who John MacArthur was. And I'm going to guess you did know who Voddie Baucham was. And I'm going to guess you did know who Justin Peters was. You knew who these other signers were. And you were happy, along with the other 14,000 people. Oh, I wrote it down somewhere. But it was over 14,000 people that have signed that document. Well, we need to continue on. I don't want to be jumping ahead of the things that Friel says. So Friel talks about the division that he thinks the social justice statement has caused. He did say, though, this is what he believes about the statement. So let's let him say what he does believe about the statement. Would you mind going ahead and going down below that video and hitting that like button? When you hit that like button, this pushes it out to more people. The algorithm certainly takes notice of that, and this will reach a lot more people. So go ahead and hit that like button now. And while you're down there, you might as well take a look at some links. These are really important links. You will find that you can grab yourself a hoodie, a t-shirt, a coffee mug, a hat, and all kinds of different designs. I'm sure you'll find something that you enjoy. You can also take a look at the Devotional Bible Study Guide, a great way to help with your quiet time. That's available. Check out the links. And if you ever feel like supporting this ministry, like you're a regular viewer, for example, it does show how you can do that. Anyway, I hope that this episode is a blessing to you. Let's get back to it.
To be clear, I affirm everything in the statement. I don't have an issue with the statement. I'm just saying this is what the statement was used for. Division. And I think that
Could it not be that the leftist movement was division? Could it not be that we were seeing division throughout the churches, and any faithful pastor was preaching on this in their congregations as early as 2018, earlier, but certainly 2018, preaching through. Certainly I preached on it. Church I was pastoring at the time, about the issue of CRT and how we're going to see that spread all throughout all these different denominations. And that's exactly what we have seen, because that's exactly what has happened, because it's an incredibly divisive ideology and wrapped up in a theology. And it is a serious issue. And here now, Todd Friel, who will later reveal, did not sign the statement, even though he was there in person, but did not sign the statement. I did not know that, but okay, like as long as he's affirms it, not sure why he felt like he couldn't sign it. He'll go on to make some other accusations, but it's a real concern that he has such an issue about people taking a stand on the gospel, taking a stand against this Marxist ideology, seeing it for what it is, seeing the subversiveness of it, calling it out, and he's saying, no, that was divisive. Standing on truth was divisive.
this is evident as you examine the speaking roster of G3. Men who were once speakers were no longer invited to participate. Why? Because they did not sign the Dallas Statement. And
Oh, okay, got it. So he was cut off as a speaker, and he's not happy about that. And others too. Like who? Like a primary speaker? Steve Lawson? Steve Lawson, until his sin was exposed of his double life and hypocrisy, did not sign the statement. So Tim Challies apparently did not sign the statement. Don't hold me to that. I heard that recently. And so there are others that did not sign the statement for one reason or another, and were still speakers. Certainly, Steve Lawson being a prime example of that. So the evidence doesn't hold up to the charges that he's making. And so maybe G3 just didn't want him to speak for different reasons. Maybe there are different reasons why. Maybe there are preferential reasons. I mean, I've never seen much of Todd Friel speak, so I probably wouldn't care for his preaching at a conference personally. That's just a personal preference of mine. And so, like, they can invite whoever they want to speak at a conference. They can do whatever they want there. But it doesn't match what he's saying. He's laying down charges, but he has no way to substantiate them, or at least he's not demonstrating it. And that's a problem.
they were considered compromisers, if not outright woke. I was one of them, but I wasn't alone. And while I can't speak for every person that Josh led us to believe are woke, I can't say that because there are some people that it's been disclosed have been woke, but not all of the brothers who refused to sign the Dallas Statement are woke. And I know that because, well, I called them and I asked them, and they're not woke, not all of them.
He called them and he asked them, said, "Are you woke?" I said, no, I'm not woke. Where'd you get that crazy idea? And he was like, whew, good. So glad, because we were about to cut you off and say you were woke and you're out of the camp and you're all of this and you're unfaithful. But I'm so glad that what you told me on the phone here, even though it doesn't match what you've been teaching for 3 years from the pulpit, I'm so glad that you're telling me you're not woke. Just like when you call a false teacher and you ask them, hey, are you a false teacher? And they say, no, I'm not a false teacher. What are you talking about? Like, it's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And maybe he's trying to be a little bit ridiculous. I don't know. It's bizarre, but we will continue, and we are on to clip 6.
Might we have disagreements with these men on some of the nuances of social justice? Yeah, but should we separate from these men with whom we don't see eye to eye on every jot and tittle? I don't think so. Josh did, and he led many others to do likewise. And this has been a devastating era for conservatives.
So he thinks it was a mistake to separate from those. He's pinning it on the statement that didn't sign the statement, but the reality is the majority of people that did not sign the statement are ones that are promoting social justice, promoting CRT ideology. Steve Lawson did not sign the statement. Others did not sign the statement, and they would still be in good fellowship. Until the things happened, but they were ones that did not sign the statement. Not everything is on the statement. However, I don't understand why one would not want to sign the statement. I do believe I know why someone like Steve Lawson would not sign the statement and why some others did not sign the statement. I think it all has to do with all of these connections, all the intermingling that all these guys have. It's like, well, we've got to be able to connect with G3, Founders, and all these other major organizations, but we've also got to connect with the more liberal leaning ones. We've got to be in good with the Gospel Coalition. We can't be on their bad side, don't want to be on their enemy list, still want to get maybe invited to maybe they'll turn back a little bit conservative and I can go to a conference and not get ousted from the Reformed camp. That's what some of these guys, I guarantee that's what they're doing. They're trying to figure out how can they have their feet in every single organization? How can they have their feet slipped into every opportunity? That's so much of what it seems to be like. But that's just a speculation that I am stating. But that just seems so much like what is going on. And when you see it clearly, you see it clearly. You don't like me seeing it clearly, that's fine. You don't see it. But when you see it, you see it. And you're just like, it's all about the opportunities because, I still want to be able to write some articles for the Gospel Coalition. And so this, everything, all of these major organizations, Big Eva, they're all connected. And these guys do things that they can do to stay connected to all these different organizations. And of course, friendships are formed and things like that. And sometimes doctrinal issues, people slide on doctrinal issues like this. You won't like this, some of you. But this did come from Josh Buice under Grant Hawthorne, just cowardice. However, the criticism is about Ligon Duncan being at the Masters University. Well, that's a fair criticism. Why are you associating with Ligon Duncan? I do understand it has to do with a Puritan conference, and so the rationale would be, well, this is a Puritan conference and this is not other type of conference. That's a debate that can be had. That's a debate that can be had as to whether you can, join with someone for something that, they have an expertise in, but you're saying we're not actually, the stuff that Ligon Duncan has been into, I really don't see how you would say that that's a good idea. I would think that you would want to completely cut off fellowship from guys like Ligon Duncan. Well, yeah, he still is, on the board. He's one of the main guys at the Gospel Coalition. Yeah, he's on the board at the Gospel Coalition. And so That's just a serious problem. But we will move on, and we will get to the next clip here, because I will demonstrate now how John MacArthur was kicking and screaming about this social justice nonsense. He was forced against his will by Josh Buice. Oh, again, forced against his will to do a blog series, forced against his will to do sermon series on it, forced against his will again and again and again. It was all Josh Buice. Every time he was preparing a sermon and bringing a sermon and talking about social justice, Josh Buice was in his head. He's just like, what's Josh going to say? What's Josh going to say? And so he went to the pulpit with that fear in mind. Every time he wrote those blog articles, he did a whole series of blog articles on CRT, social justice, all that. And every time, I'm sure he was like, well, Josh, what's Josh going to say if I don't write these? And this will demonstrate a man that is just under the compulsion of Josh Buice, as has been laid out very clearly with all evidence. It's a satire, by the way, if you can't figure that out. It has been laid out by Todd Friel that it's all one man. It was all Josh Buice leading the charge on this. Well, let's go ahead and take a watch of John MacArthur talking about the idolatry of social justice in the church.
If I were a prophet, and I'm not, but if I were a prophet in Israel, and the evangelical church was Israel, I would declare that the church had gone after Baal.
Yeah, that's a serious charge. This is June of 2020, by the way.
I would declare what the prophets of the Old Testament declared about Israel, that they had been seduced by false gods, because that is exactly what has happened to the evangelical church. It has been seduced by a false god and a false religion. The evidence of that is the complete shattering of the unity of the evangelical church. The church has gone after Baal, gone after the contemporary sociological, temporal, earthly religion that is concerned only with social issues. The church has been so seduced by this that it has fallen victim to the point where it looks exactly like a political and social organization rather than the kingdom of God confronting the world.
Amen. That does not sound like a man that is being forced by someone else to rail against the social justice movement. He sees it for the threat that it is and is preaching against that threat. And did Todd Friel forget about the threat that he saw this as? Did he forget in 2020? This is from an episode July 6, 2020. Todd Friel with an episode entitled MacArthur Drops a Bombshell. And that was the title on YouTube, at least. And this is what he had to say. It's actually mostly MacArthur in this episode, but this is what he had to say. Are you appreciating the truth that's being declared in this episode? Would you like to be reminded of God's truth each and every day? You might want to go pick up the Truth Transforms coffee mug. It's available in the merchandise shop. You can also get a t-shirt, a hoodie, or even a hat. I think that you'll find something that is a blessing to you. There are many great designs. It's also a great way to support the ministry. Go to www.preachingforgodsglory.org/merch and get 15% off today. That's preachingforgodsglory.org/merch for 15% off. God bless you, and back to the show.
This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
My concern for the current racial issues and social justice and all that has unfolded in that realm actually began 2 years ago. It was back in 2018 that I made the statement that this particular issue of social justice and accusations of racism had the potential to do more harm to the evangelical church than anything I'd ever seen in my life. that has played out to be exactly true.
Bummer. This is Wretched Radio. Dr. John MacArthur. It was give or take 2 years ago when he made that what seemed to be perhaps a rather hyperbolic statement. The biggest threat that he has seen to the gospel, to the local church, is social justice. Wow.
I just want to know, why did it seem like a hyperbolic statement?
Consider what he has seen in his lifetime. Consider the assaults against the gospel. He's written the gospel according to Jesus, the gospel according to Paul. He's written about the assaults on easy believism, lordship salvation, feminism in the church, the marriage issue. These have been big deals. And he made a statement 2 years ago stating, no, this is going to be a bigger deal.
Yeah, and you should have been able to see that. And honestly, I for one that's a pastor, leader, pastoral, at least one that's a Christian leader that can't see that's not very good discernment, because of the political ideology mixed in with the theology and pushing it into the church, and just watching the way that was spreading throughout the SBC, the largest denomination in North America. You should have been able to see, every leader should have been able to see so very clearly how that was going to spread all throughout the SBC and all throughout other denominations, and it was going to take over the church. It should have been able to be seen by every leader out there. And if they couldn't see it, I don't, not much discernment. They couldn't see it.
And I will confess to you, until give or take about, 2 months ago, I was thinking, maybe the good doctor was just a little off on that one. Nuts! He wasn't. And we're seeing it right now.
Yeah, we are. And that was 2020. Well, here's Voddie Baucham. I won't continue the satire, but it's just like, does Voddie Baucham seem like he's against his will in this episode? Voddie Baucham, who wrote Fault Lines, Voddie Baucham, who has preached hard against social justice, Voddie Baucham, who's talked about cultural Marxism and all that stuff. Here's Voddie Baucham on Glenn Beck talking about, he's being interviewed about social justice, BLM, and their Marxist agenda.
My biggest problem with this is that we're moving into a direction that says the church is not the answer. The gospel is not the answer. Christ is not the answer. In fact, the church, the gospel, and Christ are part of the problem. And Black Lives Matter and, their openly Marxist, ideology is the answer. And I know you've gone over this before, but, the idea that these people say we're self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege, right? That they want to uplift Black trans folk, that they want to replace the idea of or dismantle patriarchal nuclear family structures. These things go to the heart of who we are as Christians.
Yeah, they go to the heart of who we are as Christians. They go to the heart of the gospel. And that's why everyone was so on board with this, because it's an attack on the gospel itself. It's an attack on the gospel that we believe, the gospel that we profess, and the gospel that we preach. And that's why it's that important. And to say it's not that important and we shouldn't be dividing over social justice issues is absolutely insane to hear from a Christian. I'm not talking about the statement. I'm trying to separate the statement from the social justice issue, but how do you really separate the statement from the social justice issue? Because even if someone says that they won't sign the statement because they're against statements or something, at some point they have to be like, I adhere to it, though. I do agree with everything in it, because when they say they don't agree with what's in it, well, what don't they agree with? What do they have an issue with? Friel's talking about their particular ministry setting. What is about their ministry setting that they're not able to stand up for the gospel? When would they be able to? He who's faithful in little will be faithful in much. But if you're not faithful in little, then how will you ever be faithful? Like, this is, how would they ever stand up for it then? And did Friel forget about all that he talked about regarding social justice? I mean, here he's got Phil Johnson on, 8 differences between biblical and social justice. He did all kinds of episodes on it. This is the clip we listened to, MacArthur dropping a bombshell. And here you go, search all these different ministries. Search Founders Ministries. This is just an example of when he says he wants to use Josh Buice as a scapegoat. But the reality is he's attacking every single Christian that's anti-social justice, anti-CRT. That's an attack on all Christians that were grateful when that statement came out and were like, okay, clarity and division, because truth divides. Truth unites, yes, in the gospel, but truth divides on important doctrinal issues, and truth divides believers and unbelievers. And so this is definitely an issue of dividing on doctrinal issues that are important doctrinal issues. I'm not going to get into believers, unbelievers. Some have gone so far that it's very apparent. It's just very, very apparent where they stand. But we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about, can you have fellowship with people that think you're inherently racist if you're white? Can you have fellowship with people that hate you because of your skin color? No, you cannot. You cannot have fellowship with those that hate brothers in Christ. That just you can't do that. But you look at you go look at all these ministries and search social justice, and you can scroll down and get more. This is a screenshot. This is Founders Ministry. Was Founders Ministry influenced by Josh Buice and his leading the charge when they did conferences on this issue? Or were they of their own volition fighting against social justice? Grace to you, social justice. All kinds of stuff all over YouTube. Here's Wretched on social justice. You're going to find all kinds of stuff there. Search CRT, you've got similar things. Search social justice on Grace to You, and you get over almost 2,100 results. And then do we remember this? I hope you remember this, but if you don't, I'm going to play some of it for you. And this was some time ago, March 6, 2019, at a Shepherd's Conference entitled Thinking Biblically About Social Justice, panel Q&A. And I watched this whole thing. It's about I watched like a half-hour portion of it. We're going to watch just a little bit of this, and we're going to see how Phil Johnson presses Al Mohler and some of the others on stage. We're mostly just going to see Al Mohler in these clips being pressed. But there's Ligon Duncan, Al Mohler, Mark Dever, and I forget his name now, but he doesn't get to speak. He's just watching them like, what's going on? What is going on in America right now? But let's go ahead and get started. And this is about disagreements regarding social justice. So Phil Johnson is asking about the leftward drift and dangerous teaching spreading in the church. And this is what Al Mohler has to say.
All right, so let me ask some more difficult questions. You all have been friends for longer than 2 decades, and there haven't in those years been very many things that you've disagreed on publicly, but now there is with the social justice issue. And so I wanted to ask some questions about that. And let me start with you, Al, because you've said something that I've thought of often. I think it's a really good insight, and that is that sort of the leftward drift, the liberalizing drift that affects not only politics but theology happens incrementally, but any reformation towards the right happens exponentially. Are you not concerned at all about the liberalizing drift of the social justice movement and all the rhetoric that goes along with that?
Just to, there's just Phil Johnson pressing John MacArthur over there on the right, just to drive home the point. Who are we talking? Voddie Baucham, John MacArthur, Phil Johnson, they're all these guys. This is not something that is orchestrated by Josh Buice. This is a complete dividing line in Christianity, and it's like Todd Friel doesn't seem to recognize it. Okay, let's hear Mueller's answer.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah, the only offense I take at that is that I talk about this 5 times a week for 25 minutes.
Well, so let me give you my perspective on that, because you
see how bothered he is by the question and the whole conversation?
don't take offense, but I do listen to you every morning. You have opinions on everything in the news, but when it comes to the evangelical movement and the social justice issue, particularly, I'm not talking about what happens in the world of politics, but I'm talking about what happens among our constituents and the rhetoric that's going on in places like T4G and the Gospel Coalition. You have been remarkably silent. It's one of those issues where I've only heard you speak on it in the Ask Anything sections when people ask you questions like I'm doing right now. And
yeah, I think the pushback is, I think that's what my whole life is speaking about. I mean, I began, all my public ministry began dealing with these questions. So I do take a bit of offense, not personally, but I am not going to be forced into a Twitter conversation in 140 characters about these issues. I have been trying to lay out for 30 plus years an understanding of how evangelicals should engage the culture. And I cut my teeth apologetically confronting cultural Marxism and the entire network of issues of the left.
He'll continue. He that's a continual phrase he's always talking about. I cut my teeth dealing with cultural Marxism. And the way in which Mueller has operated all these years, though, is that he would watch things like Resolution 9 just pass. He wouldn't say a thing about it anywhere that mattered. But then the very next day, after Resolution 9, for example, the very next day he talked about it. And that was basically like the only time that he talked about it. Resolution 9, by the way, is the SBC, when the SBC passed a resolution on CRT and intersectionality. And it was definitely a watershed moment within the SBC, and it was just a major issue all around. But yeah, he didn't talk about these things where it mattered, and he also let CRT be taught all throughout the seminary without dealing with it, which is really sad because he was part of a conservative resurgence. I remember I watched like a movie documentary on the whole turnaround that happened at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and it was really an amazing thing, getting rid of these liberal professors and bringing in all this conservatism, and it was had much admiration for him actually when hearing about this and watching that, and then all this CRT stuff comes along, and he didn't deal with it. There was no leadership there. There was no standing up to it. And that's concerning. And I'll say more. Let me continue.
You look at who I invite to my campus. You look at who I cite. You look at who I platform. I feel pretty good about the message that I'm sending there.
He platformed Jarvis Williams. He platformed other guys' names I can't think of right now, but a lot of CRT proponents. And as far as I understand, I haven't paid attention to what's going on at that seminary for a long time now, but as far as I understand, they're still in their roles teaching that stuff.
When it comes to concerns about the evangelical left, absolutely. I have been quite vocal, and anyone who knows the conversations amongst evangelical leadership knows exactly where. I am on these issues. How best to articulate that concern in this particular moment, that's not easy. That's not easy. And I have tried to help to interpret these issues as clearly and biblically and charitably as I can. I'm afraid we're going to lose an enormous number of evangelicals to various kinds of social gospel, because that's a lot easier to find satisfaction in than evangelism. And so again, I look at what I do on my campus, look at who I platform, look at the issues I write about, knowing exactly how to help younger evangelicals figure these things out, which is actually my job as a seminary president. That's not real easy.
Phil's going to push back again when he's done with this, but again, you see repeatedly, look at who I platform, look at who I highlight. And you kind of wonder, is he trying to actually give a message that I am for this stuff? Because the very people that he was platforming and highlighting were the very people that were the proponents of CRT.
And I will confess that. But I'm trying to be as clear as I can be on this. I mean, for years, this has been the great concern. T4G was largely created out of the concern that there was confusion over what the gospel is.
Right.
And confusion, and by the way, I will acknowledge to you that there are clarifications that T4G needs to make with my partners sitting here.
He's talking about Ligon Duncan there, it sure sounds like, because Ligon Duncan is right next to him. He's saying there's clarifications on the gospel that need to be made here with my partners. And T4G, Ligon Duncan was a part of that. And Ligon Duncan also on the board of the Gospel Coalition, TGC. And so he's making it clear they don't even agree fully on things.
And will make.
I won't get too personal about that, but and I also don't want to just pick on you, so I'll skip over my next question, which was going to be, why didn't...
I don't mind it.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to respond as honestly as I'm asked.
But you didn't sign the statement on social justice and the gospel, the Dallas statement. None of you did. So let me just ask the three of you, how far apart are we on this?
Okay, so there's the question, how far apart are we on this? And it goes on for 20 minutes or so until we pick up where I'm going to pick it back up for us. But it's just continually trying to get them to say something, and with not much success there. He asks, how far apart are we? So pushes it on, 20 minutes of just continually hammering, pushing back, Phil Johnson, and then here we see Phil asking what some of the greatest threats are to our convictions. Let's watch.
I've been a Christian since the 70s, and it seems that there have been major threats to evangelical core convictions that come in waves. We had the inerrancy battle. There was pragmatism in the seeker-sensitive churches, the emerging church movement, and several others that I've kind of skipped over. What would you see as the looming threats to our shared convictions?
Well, I'm trying to say I agree with you about much of what you see as the looming threat. But the reality is the same thing is a danger that I see looming, and I'm quite concerned about it, trying to address that as best I know how. The difference is this. And I debated Jim Wallace in person. The difference is this. Jim and others, Jim will speak as an evangelical, and but they don't want to get very specific in theology. One distinctive, which is a part of our challenge right now, is that there are people who will agree with every point of our theological system who are not seeing the other issues the same way. That's requiring a different kind of apologetic argument. Does that make sense?
It does. But I go back to what you said about incremental changes that promote that sort of liberalizing tendency, and realize that just last year at both the Gospel Coalition and Together for the Gospel, I was hearing some rhetoric that actually I first heard from Jim Wallace and Sojourners 20, 30 years ago. And so I think what I'm asking you is, in fact, what I am asking you is, do you not see that the evangelical movement, even our constituency, the most conservative end of the evangelical movement, is becoming a little more susceptible to that?
But Phil, you've known me for a long time. You know the answer to the question is yes, but I'm not going to be forced into a situation before thousands of people in which I have to say I'm going to do it your way. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just not. And if that's
Fair
a test
enough.
of fellowship amongst us, this will be a good time to find out.
Let me jump in and just say,
Well, you see how tense it was getting there, and then MacArthur jumps in and he tries to smooth it out a little bit, and they move on from there, because that's about as far as they're gonna push. But 25 minutes of pushing and pushing and pushing, and which is a lot, and continually coming back, not dropping it, and asking, what is it about this statement that you won't sign it? At one point, Mueller alludes to the fact that, it doesn't allude to it, he says it very plainly, he didn't have a part in it, he didn't get to author it, so he doesn't like that. That's one aspect, okay. So pride in authorship, all right. But there are other things too. And just these guys all said they didn't want to have anything to do with signing that statement. That they didn't, and it's not just the signing the statement though. I think Friel's putting too much on the statement, because all the statement did is it divided people onto those who were willing to sign it and say, I adhere to this, and those who were not willing to sign it. And not willing to sign it, generally speaking, because they were continuing to teach it or allow it to be taught in their churches, in their seminaries, people they fellowship with, all that sort of thing. Or they didn't want to lose fellowship with those who were extremely, extremely woke. All kinds of scenarios. And so the statement was absolutely, as Voddie Baucham would say, a fault line. It was a dividing line. And not the statement, really, but I mean, the statement helped. The social justice issue, it's these issues that are the dividing lines. We divide on these major issues. Do you believe that Jesus Christ is Lord? Oh, we're going to divide if you don't believe that he's Lord. Do you believe that he is fully divine? We're going to divide if you don't believe that he's divine. Do you believe that one is saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, to the glory of God alone? Oh, you don't believe that? You believe that we ought to add works? Well, then we're going to have to divide, because that's the purpose of these theological statements. That's the purpose of confessions throughout all of Christendom. And so for Todd Friel to say that it's not a big deal is very, very concerning. And we're going to get back to the final clip here. I actually have to pause it and load it up, so let me do that now. Do you ever get frustrated with your daily Bible reading or Bible study routine? Maybe you don't feel like you're able to have enough time to dig deep, or you're just not quite sure how to get to application. Well, that's why I created the Devotional Bible Study Guide to help with that problem. It's got guided questions that help walk you through, and in a short amount of time, the goal is, of course, to help get to that meaningful application. I've got a video that goes in more detail about that. That video is linked below in the description and the pinned comment. Take a look, see what you think. I hope that you're blessed by it. God bless. Okay, well, I did have it prepped. I figured out what I did with it. Okay, so let's read this before we do that. This is Friel speaking, and he said this in the video. Well, I cannot say we should reconcile with each and every person who didn't sign the Dallas Statement. Perhaps we can once again enjoy fellowship and be blessed by brothers who simply didn't sign the statement for the sake of their own ministries or consciences. Now, we'll get to his clip here, but for the sake of their own ministries and consciences, well, what is it about their conscience that is opposed to the gospel? The statement is simply about the gospel. In fact, let me just jump over to the statement here. I do have that statement open, and we'll just jump over to the statement here real quick. The statement on social justice and the gospel. I mean, this is affirmations and denials. Scripture, affirming the authority of Scripture and denying intersectionality, radical feminism, critical race theory, things that go against the authority of Scripture. Okay. We've got Imago Dei, so created in the image of God. It's an affirmation of that, and denying socioeconomic status, ethnicity, religion, sex, physical condition. So it's denying things that go against God's good creation and try to redefine that with social constructs. Justice. We affirm that since he is holy, righteous, and just, God requires those who bear his image to live justly in the world. It goes on. Well, I'm not going to read all this, but we deny that justice can be culturally defined or the standards of the justice. So it's all by the standard of God's word, God's law. We affirm that God's law, as summarized in the Ten Commandments, more succinctly summarized in the two great commandments and manifested in Jesus Christ, is the only standard of unchanging righteousness. Violation of that law is what constitutes sin. And then, of course, denials. We deny all of this here, things that push against that. Okay, sin, we affirm that, and so there's stuff about sin, there's stuff about the gospel. That's pretty, that's the main issue there. It's all about the gospel, things about the salvation, and we deny that it can be received in any other way than faith in Jesus Christ. The church primary role is to worship God through the preaching of his word. Deny that political social activism should be viewed as integral components of the gospel or primary to the mission of the church. This is all good stuff. Heresy, we affirm that heresy is denial or departure from a doctrine that is essential to the Christian faith. We further affirm that heresy often involves the replacement of key essential truths with variant concepts or the elevation of non-essentials to the status of essentials, all kinds of stuff. And we deny that the charge of heresy can be legitimately brought against every failure to achieve perfect conformity to all that is implied in sincere faith in the gospel. I think this is also in there to make it clear that they're not saying that those who didn't sign or that those who are caught up in some social justice stuff are heretics. That's not what the statement is saying. The statement is just simply saying that we affirm the truths of God's word, and we deny that goes against it. We affirm sexuality and marriage. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Denying gay Christians. Complementarianism, the belief of it's against feminism. Proper roles, proper role distinction, and between men and women in the church and in the home. Race, ethnicity. Race is a social construct, but there is ethnicity and some statements regarding that. Culture. We affirm some cultures operate on assumptions that are inherently better than those of other cultures, but because of the biblical truths that inform these worldviews. We're not going to read it all, but some stuff about racism and some addendums. And check this out. Also, there's resources. In those resources, you've got articles. And in those articles, you've got guys like Tom Buck, Josh Buice, James White. You've got videos. You've got, I was here a minute ago and saw Voddie Baucham. Well, Voddie Baucham's there. I promise you. I saw him. And so you've got resources that are showing different videos and things like that. There's John MacArthur and Tom Ascol and Voddie Baucham on cultural Marxism. So these guys were not pushed by Josh Buice. That is putting an awful lot of too much on one person. Like, you're giving him far too much influence than he's ever had. Like that's come on, Friel. Like that's just wrong. So let's get to this final clip by Todd Friel, very short clip that he comes back, and this is what he has to say about fellowship. I had just read that, so let's look at it again. I While I cannot say we should reconcile with each and every person who didn't sign the Dallas Statement, perhaps we can once again enjoy fellowship and be blessed by brothers who simply didn't sign the statement for the sake of their own ministries or consciences. Okay, so that's what he has to say. Let's watch.
I think we have enough distance now in the rearview mirror to conclude, well, these guys are really conservative, and they're persevering, and they're doing really good ministry. And yeah, I disagree with them on maybe this or that, but maybe they're not woke. And maybe, just maybe, we can enjoy unity with them again and be blessed by them again.
And that's the gist of it. He goes on to say some other things in that video. I certainly can't play the whole video. I have to play portions of it for you. But the whole basis of it is that the social justice statement was wrong. Having this statement against Marxism was wrong. He's saying that the division due to this Marxist ideology was wrong. It was a mistake. And that's a great problem. That's a serious problem. And he doesn't say who he's talking about. He doesn't say who he's talking about joining together with. He just simply says, I'm not going to tell you who that is because that's not my place to tell you, which is extremely unhelpful. He doesn't say who he's talking about, who he thinks that we should have fellowship with. Again, one could guess. Is he talking about Al Mohler? Is he talking about Nine Marks Ministries? Is he talking about any of these people? And we can all point to things. Nine Marks has done great material regarding ecclesiology in the church, how worship services should be structured, how the preaching of the word, just all of that, how the church should function, ecclesiology. And so there are good things that that a lot of different people have done, but the problem is that they've all promoted social justice for so many years. Maybe some of them are backing off of it a little bit, and if they are, one can look at that and say, well, look at the cultural climate. A lot of these guys in quote unquote Big Eva, they shift, and I called this earlier at the beginning of, I'm like, we're going to start seeing a lot of people moving to the right because that's the way the wind is blowing, sort of, but not entirely, but sort of. And so they just kind of move whichever direction is politically acceptable. And so if it's not as acceptable to be as much of a leftist, it's a test of just how much they do believe that. Because some people are just moving with the politics, the political wind of the day, and others are actually going hardcore on their Marxist ideology, and they're going to continue going hard left. So that's just kind of some of the different things that we see. But no, Todd Friel's dead wrong on this, and I do really hope he reconsiders this. This is not, I do think this could be why you've probably seen him kind of distance himself from certain people, and he didn't sign the statement. He had a reason, I guess, not to sign that statement. But now he's gone after everyone that has signed the statement using Josh Buice, using Josh Buice as the example, as a scapegoat. And so that is just that is just a really bizarre thing to do. And to lay a charge on Buice that you can't substantiate, would that not be slandered? I'm not here to defend Buice, but I mean, to say that Buice did all of these things and to say that Josh Buice is solely responsible for all the division that we've seen in Christianity or evangelicalism or Reformed Christianity or whatever exactly he's referring to. I mean, that's quite the charge. So he really should have been bringing some form of evidence, some way of substantiating his claim. Thanks for joining me for today's Truth Transforms You want to find out about the announcement and the what I'm talking about, more Bible teaching and Theology Thursdays coming soon and things like that, then you definitely want to sign up for go to preachingforgodsglory.org/TS Live. Find out more about the ministry, more about the overview of the podcast and all of this and plans I have in place. So go to preachingforgodsglory.org/TS Live. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit this like button so we can help more people see this content. God bless you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you enjoyed today's episode, I want to let you know real quick, if you ever feel led to support, these are some ways that can be done. You can, of course, do that by providing a one-time love offering. There's a link below that shows you how you can do that. Also, you can visit the merchandise shop and find something that you enjoy, and that would help out as well. And you would also have some merch that you'll definitely like. There's hoodies, t-shirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of merch in there. And you can take a look at the Devotional Bible Study Guide. There's a link to a video. You can find out more about that. Also, if you do decide to visit the merchandise shop, what you're going to find is all kinds of different designs. There you see a few examples. Sermon Fuel, Don't Get Mad at Me, I Just Preach the Bible. My dad's my favorite pastor. My husband's my favorite preacher. And I'm going to tell you, by far the most popular is my husband is my favorite preacher. And Don't Get Mad at Me, I Just Preach the Bible. This Preach the Word's pretty popular as well. Then here's, again, my husband's my favorite preacher in pink. And you can take a look at the designs. There's a lot more to look at. So be sure to visit the store and check out those other links below. God bless you, and thanks for watching.